Hey, what's up, folks? How y'all doing? This is Quad B for Bamboozled Black Baby Boomer, coming at you from the Washington, D.C. area on Wednesday, June 27th, 2018, about 7:53 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm going live because I just had to talk about the passing of Joe Jackson, a patriarch's patriarch. And what I mean is, he is the man that was truly behind the creation of one of pop music's most enduring groups, the Jackson Five, made up initially of five of his sons. That would be Marlon, Michael, Jermaine, Tito, and Jackie. And of course, they had Marlon, who was the other son, and three daughters, who would be Rebbie, Latoya, and Janet. Now, as you probably know, if you followed music, if you've been alive as long as I have, I remember as a 10-year-old when the Jackson Five first hit the scene with a song called, what was it? I Want You Back. Oh, baby, give me one more chance. Won't you please let me back in your heart? All right, I'm not going to do that to you anymore. But I wanted to just come on and talk about Joe Jackson and the fact that, and I'm going from memory on a lot of this stuff because I just wanted to get on here and just talk. I have a lot of respect for that man, for what he did. The fact that I think, if I recall correctly, if my memory serves me right, he had dreams of being a musician. And instead, he ended up working in, I believe, the steel mills in and around a steel mill near his home, the Jackson family home in Gary, Indiana, which is many of you know is a few miles southeast of Chicago, Illinois. I don't know how far it is. Maybe it's more than a few miles. Actually, I actually ended up in Gary during this trip to Chicago years ago, hanging out with some friends of a friend. It's kind of cool. But yeah, Joe Jackson. Matter of fact, Joe Jackson has sparked some debate. The death of Joe Jackson has sparked some debate. Was he a strict father who just wanted the best for his large brood of children? Oh, we can't forget Catherine, the mom, the matriarch, too. I forgot to mention her. Sorry. Was he a strict father who just wanted the best for his kids, or was he sort of an abusive tyrant? Well, there was a story that ran, it's online in the Daily News, the New York Daily News, and I will link to it in the description of the chat. And I'll get to this later. One thing I wanted to talk about was that, I think about a black man growing up in that time. He died at 89, which would make him, let me see here. Let me call up a calculator real quick. Okay, Windows 10. I still can't get used to it. So if he was 89, so 2018, let's just say minus 89, that would have had him born in 1929, somewhere thereabouts. My own father was okay, first of all, 1929 was about the start of the Depression. My own father was born a few years later in 1933. And suffice it to say, if you were a black male born around the Depression, which was also during the Jim Crow era, life wasn't all that fun. And it took me years to figure that out. So Joe Jackson's death has sort of eclipsed. What's up? Thanks for joining. Joe Jackson's death had me thinking about the relationship between me, my siblings, and my own father. Because my father wasn't no joke to grow up around either. He did all the right things, but he wasn't perfect either. And I guess that's what it comes down to. Are human beings perfect? Fuck no. But it's still good to talk about this stuff, you know, in terms of how Black men who are fathers should approach raising their kids. And I got some stories to tell you about how my father raised my kids. Matter of fact, you ever heard the joke when somebody pulls out a belt to get ready to whoop some ass? Some people have actually nicknamed their belts Joe Jackson. Okay. I know some of y'all have heard that. So anyhow, let me go to this story about from the New York Daily News. Let me see if I can screen share this sucker with you. Here we go. All right. So here it is. It says Joe Jackson's children, Michael, LaToya, and Janet, said he beat, abused, and terrified them. Now, this is 3 of his kids who were pretty famous. LaToya, well, let's say Michael was famous for being able to sing. Janet, I really do believe, was a better actress than she was a singer. And LaToya, well, she was just famous for being a famous Jackson, as far as I'm concerned. But let's take a look at what the story says. It says, let me kind of pull this in for you guys so you can see it a little better. Okay, there we go. And no, we don't want a free trial of anything. The death of Joe Jackson Wednesday left many fans feeling torn over the 89-year-old Jackson family patriarch's legacy. Would he be remembered as the glue that kept the Jackson Five together, a dedicated family man who knew the extremes it took to achieve unprecedented success in the music world? Or would the long circulating reports of an abusive Jackson who would stop at nothing to push his children into a life they did not necessarily want overshadow his children's countless Grammy Awards and Billboard records? Here are some of the most notable statements by Michael, LaToya, Janet, and Jermaine about their father and the impact he had on their lives. So we go to 1988. We have Michael Jackson in his autobiography, Moonwalk, from 1988, quote, "He's still a mystery man to me, and he may always be one," the singer wrote in his autobiography. "One of the few things I regret most is never being able to have a real closeness with him. He built a shell around himself over the years, and once he stopped talking about our family business, he found it hard to relate to us. My father did always protect us, and that's no small feat." Then we drop down to 1991. LaToya Jackson, in an interview on the daytime talk show at that time, which was called Regis and Kathy Lee. And here's a quote from LaToya. "There was always that facade up there, smiling in front of the cameras. But when we got home, it was totally different, an entirely different lifestyle at home. It was very, very hard. My father was very strict. He beat us, belts, whips, whatever," Jackson told the host while promoting her book, quote, LaToya, Growing Up in the Jackson Family. "My brothers were grown, and my father would take his fists and punch them and knock them down the steps constantly. To this day, they are still afraid of my father, they will tell you." Jackson claimed her father's cruelty wasn't limited to physical abuse. He also mentally and sexually abused his children. Now that one is a new one on me. I've never seen that before. But here it says the family has denied those charges. Quote, "There were times when my mother would say, 'Please, Joe, not tonight. Leave her alone. Let her rest. Don't get into bed with her.'" Holy shit. she said, referring to older sister Rebbie, who she claimed Joe sexually abused. He did abuse me very badly. Okay, let me stop right here. Wow. I don't know if I don't know what Rebbie had to say. And for those of you who don't know, Rebbie was the oldest of all 9 children. And I remember back in the early 80s, she actually had a song that did pretty well in the R&B charts. It was called Centipede. Look it up. I mean, I would play it for you, but I don't want YouTube, as usual, I don't want YouTube giving me a copyright strike for playing copyrighted material. Well, not so much a copyright strike, but when I get to the point where I can monetize this channel, I need all the monetizable channels I can get, so I'm not going to be playing any music. But Rebbie did have a song called Centipede back in 83 or 84. So now let's go to, again, 1993, Michael Jackson talking to Oprah Winfrey. He goes, my father teased me. He tell me I'm ugly. I love my father, but I don't know him. Am I angry with him? Sometimes I do get angry. Yes. I don't know him the way I'd like to know him. I just wish I could understand my father, Jackson told Winfrey. Quote, he would beat me, in parentheses, because he wanted me to. I don't know if I was his golden child or whatever it was. Some may call it a strict disciplinarian or whatever, but he was very strict, very hard, very stern. And just a look would scare you, frightened. Jackson also told the host that just the sight of his father would be enough to make him throw up, and that while he struggled with his feelings, he still did love Joe. Quote, I do love him and I am forgiving. And then in 2001, Michael talked to a rabbi, Shumli Botich. Okay. Jackson bared his soul to Botich in 2000 and 2001 for a series of extensive recordings, which were later released after his death in 2009. The bad singer spoke at length about his conflicting feelings toward the man he was forced to call Joseph, revealing that his father once said that if he and his siblings ever stopped singing, Joe would drop them like a hot potato. Mother Catherine was always the one in the background when he would lose his temper, hitting us and beating us. I hear it now. Joe, no, you're going to kill them. No, Joe, it's too much. And he would be breaking furniture, and it was terrible. Michael recalled he would make you strip nude first. Oh, man. He would oil you down. It would be a whole ritual. Oh, shit. Really? So when the foot of the ironing cord hit you, it just, and it was like me dying. And he would just whip you all over your face, your back, everywhere. I would just give up. Like there was nothing I could do, and I hated him for it. The king of pop said that even after all these years later, he was still scared of Joe, despite the fact that time had softened him. Time and age has changed him, and he sees his grandchildren, and he wants to be a better father. It's almost like the ship has sailed its course, and it's so hard for me to accept this other guy is not the guy I was raised with. I just wish I had learned that earlier. That sentence right there resonates with Quad B, wishing you had learned something earlier. And I'm going to get into that. Okay. I can't see him as a new man. I am like an angel in front of him, like scared. One day he said to me, why are you scared of me? I couldn't answer him. I felt like saying, do you know what you have done? Do you know what you have done to me? And okay, let me scroll down. There's more from Michael. Okay, let's hear from Jermaine. Actually, there's a lot of quotes here from some of the Jackson kids. So let's hear from Jermaine, who, as you remember, Mike, some of you don't know this, but when the Jackson 5 jumped from Motown to CBS in the mid-70s, Jermaine married Berry Gordy, who was the head of Motown, married his daughter Hazel. So Jermaine stayed behind at Motown while the other Jackson siblings jumped to CBS. or CBS Epic. That was the name of the label. Some of y'all might remember it was an orange label with an E at the lowercase E at the top for Epic. So anyway, we have Jermaine telling Access Hollywood. He's probably second to Michael, one of the most misunderstood people. And my father is the reason we're sitting here right now. And because of all of the discipline, we didn't understand it, but we do now very clearly, Jermaine said in defense of Joe. Michael being one of the youngest at the time, he didn't understand. My father is different than my father is no different than any other father that just wanted things a certain way, and it was not abuse. So Jermaine was defending Joe. Okay, and this is back in 2009. Let's see. Okay, now we have Janet. We have some stuff from Marlon and Tito, but we'll skip down to Janet. Janet. Again, I will link this so you can read it at your leisure, but let's see what Janet had to say. Janet opened up about her strained relationship with Joe, but said he only ever raised his hand to her one time. Quote, I think my father means well and wants nothing but the best for his kids. I just think the way he went about things wasn't the best way, but it got the job done. And maybe it's because of how he was raised, doing what he thought was best, not knowing any better. Isn't that something? Hey, haven't I said before? I've said this many times, maybe not on this platform, but I've said it to other people. You don't know what you don't know. That's just life. Janet said that they did not speak very often, and she once tried to call him dad instead of Joseph to no avail. Quote, I wish our relationship was different, but I know that he loves me. There's no question about it. I think he did a wonderful job with us, the outcome, but I think the way he went about it, I don't know if I agree with that, but we turned out okay. Wow. How many other Black people, baby boomers with, silent era, not greatest generation, silent generation era parents who were Black parents who were born during the Depression, born during Jim Crow, can say the same thing about their parents. I know I can say the same thing about my dad. I love my dad to death. He did a lot of the right things, but he could be, oh my God, he could be mad. He had his moments. Trust me. My own father, he had his moments, nowhere near as bad as what, in terms of alleged sexual abuse, that didn't happen. As far as I don't think that never happened. What am I saying? No, that did not happen. But my father, he had his moments because he was raised during the Depression. He came of age in Philadelphia, what I like to call Jim Crow Philadelphia, in the 40s. If you were a Black man living in the 1940s, it had to have been hell. And the funny thing was, he didn't really start opening up to me until maybe the last couple of years. In the last couple of years, my father's now 85. Joe was 89. I don't know how much longer my father's going to be here. But when he started, and my father's he's got a little dementia going on, but all of a sudden he started talking, and I took my cell phone out and I started to record. And you know what? I traded in cell phones and I tried to move everything over using that Smart Switch app from one phone to another, but the recordings didn't make it. I should have downloaded those damn things or uploaded them, to a computer. But he was talking about a lot of stuff like growing up in Philadelphia. My father was fair-skinned. His own father was born to a Black woman, I believe, and a white amputee Confederate veteran and in the 1800s. So by the time my father was born in 1933, my grandfather, who I never got to know because he was 60. He was 65 at the time, and my grandfather apparently died in the mid-50s because he was hit by a car, pinned against a wall or another vehicle, and injured his leg. Gangrene set in. Of course, medical sciences, and it wasn't as good then as it is today, and he passed away. So I never got to meet my paternal grandfather. And so for all intensive purposes, it was my grandmother that raised my father. Again, Black community, matriarchy, all that good stuff. But getting back to Joe, again, my life kind of tracks. My life actually tracks the Jacksons. And here's the thing. You have Joe dying 2 days after the 9th anniversary of the death of Michael. And when Michael died, let me tell you something. When I heard that Michael died back in 2009, it felt like a cousin of mine that I'd grown up with had passed away. Oh yeah, that's what it felt like. I couldn't believe it. And as young as he was at the time, Michael and the Jackson 5, I remember when they first came out back around 1970 with ABC and I Want You Back and those little pop hits. And I remember thinking, wow, that must be really cool. I used to wish I could be one of them. Hell, if I couldn't be Michael, I'd settle for being Tito. You know? I'd settle for being Tito. But man, oh man, oh man. I remember those days when we couldn't go outside in school. I was in 5th grade in 1970, and we couldn't go outside because there was snow on the ground, for recess. So we stayed in and played records, and the girls loved the Jackson 5. And some of us dudes did too. We liked the Jackson 5 too. Matter of fact, we saw the Jackson 5 as competition. Well, actually, it was the Jackson 5 first. Then those Osmonds came along. They couldn't have a black pop group, dominating the landscape. They had to bring in a white family pop group, and that happened to be Donnie and Marie and all those guys. No shade to Donnie and Marie, I'm just saying. But I remember how cool I thought it would be to be a member of the Jackson clan until I saw the movie, what was it? The Jackson Family, The American Dream in the early 90s. The one where Lawrence Hilton Jacobs played Joe Jackson. Now, for those of you who don't know who Lawrence Hilton Jacobs is, Lawrence Hilton Jacobs. Now, when I first saw Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, he was on a situation comedy called Welcome Back, Kotter, which starred Gabe Kaplan and a few other people, including a up-and-coming actor named, what was his name? Oh yeah, John Travolta. So he was in that show. He also appeared in some other movies, including Claudine, Cooley High, Roots, and, Welcome Back, Kotter, and Bangers and Mash, and the Jacksons, and American Dream. And there you have Lawrence Hilton Jacobs right there on the screen. So, but when I saw that movie and I saw how Joe was portrayed, and again, you got to take those movies with a grain of salt. They're going to take dramatic license on shit. You're trying to, compress God knows how many years of normal, everyday, uneventful life into a 2-hour, 3 or however long movie. So you got to make it very interesting. You got to play up the conflict. And when I saw that, and I remember a scene where Michael did not want to get on the get on a plane or something like that, and they physically dragged him onto an aircraft to travel to some show or something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, that didn't look like much fun. And so I'm watching that movie, and I also read a book by a biographer named J. Randy Taraborelli. It was called Michael Jackson, The Magic and the Madness. And again, I'll link to all these. I'd actually read pieces of that book back in the day, and it was very well done. It was very well sourced. He used a lot of interviews. The writer used a lot of interviews and documents and stuff like that. But let me tell you how hard the Jackson 5 actually worked when they were with Motown. It was said in this book that the Jackson 5 recorded something like 800 songs for Motown. Now wrap your head around that. 800 songs? How many of those songs are still sitting in a vault unreleased? And I think what I understand was that how Motown would do things, right? Let's take one song. Never Can Say Goodbye comes to mind, and that was written by Clifton Davis. And as you know, Clifton Davis was an actor. He played on that show called Amen, that starring opposite Sherman Hemsley, who was on the Jeffersons, and Anna Maria Horsford, and some other folks. But I actually met Clifton Davis at a church. He later became a minister. I met him at a church in Hampton, Virginia, back in 1996, I think it was. I actually shook his hand, and he preached and he sang. He sang and then he preached. But he wrote the song Never Can Say Goodbye, and I think he's probably still eating off that song today. But what I think how Motown did it was they'd have all their groups, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, the Supremes, the Jackson 5, or whoever. Tammy Terrell, they'd all record the same song, and whichever version they thought was the best would get released to the public. So Never Can Say Goodbye was done by the Jackson 5. Let's look that up just for craps and giggles, okay? Never Can Say Goodbye. Where is it? Wikipedia. And let me say something about Wikipedia. If Wikipedia is a good starting point for research, but never, if you're writing papers for school, folks, don't quote Wikipedia. All the citations are below. Go look at the citations and do your research from there. It says here, Never Can Say Goodbye was written by Clifton Davis and originally recorded by the Jackson 5. Who else did it? Gloria Gaynor did a version of it, okay, in 1974. Let's see, who else? The Communards. Oh, no, I've never heard of them. Oh, yeah, Isaac Hayes. The late Isaac Hayes did it, too, for his album Black Moses. And other covers, Grant Green, Andy Williams, Junior Walker, The Supremes, Smokey Robinson, Cal Tjader, David T. Walker, the Sandpipers, Rashawn Roland Kirk, Johnny Hammond Smith, Herbie Mann, Yaz, Sheena Easton, Gerald Albright, Sonny and Cher, Westlife. So all these people, and then you have Vanessa Williams. So you had all these people who covered this song, but that's just one song. I don't know how many albums the Jackson 5 came out with. Again, we can look it up, but I'm not going to do that right now. If you feel like doing it, you can. But when I read that they recorded 800 songs, you know how much time it takes to record 800 songs? So basically, these guys, the Jacksons, they didn't have a normal childhood. What we consider a normal childhood. These guys did not go out and play. They didn't play ball. They weren't out on the basketball court. They weren't throwing a football around. They weren't, dating girls and whatnot. These guys were recording and touring and traveling and appearing on, various venues like television shows and whatnot. So these guys were working early. And I thought to myself, I guess there is a price to be paid for fame, right? And Joe was right at the center of it all. Joe made sure all that shit happened. So, yeah, but as far as the beatings and all that, now, if you happen to be a white person listening to this, there's something you might want to know. Why is corporal punishment so prevalent in the Black community? Look in the fucking mirror. Maybe not you, but look in the mirror. Because of you. Not you, but your ancestors. Slavery and then Jim Crow. One of the things that I cannot stand and look at online, on social media, are white people who say, get over slavery. All right. How about Jim Crow? I actually had a colleague who was white, who was married to a woman from Zimbabwe. This was back about 20 years ago. And we got to talking about slavery and Jim Crow and stuff. And he said to me, bamboozled, Quad B. He said to me, you seem to be more angry over Jim Crow than you are slavery. And I thought about it and I said, yeah, you're right. Now, granted, slavery has been with humanity in some form or fashion for millennia, but Jim Crow was just something totally different as practiced in America. The fact that if you looked at somebody the wrong way, you could be killed. The fact that you fight for the country, you come home, you're in uniform, and white people still want to lynch you. So the reason for beating your kids' asses is, as my father put it whenever his mom whooped his ass, was, I'm whooping your ass so that the white man doesn't do it. In other words, behave. I'm whooping your ass as a reminder for you to behave because, hey, I'm just inflicting pain. The white man's gonna fucking kill you. That's why corporal punishment is so prevalent in the Black community. And trust me, Quad B got his share of ass whoopings. Usually it was done by my mom. Now, my mom was from down south. She saw the writing on the wall. She got out of Dodge and went to New York to live with some of her siblings who were already up there. And then my father went up there to New York, and that's how they met. And they knew some people. They knew some of the same people. And, of course, that's how Quad B and his two siblings ended up being born up in New York City. Okay? And where we lived in before, and then 6 years later, we moved to New Jersey, right near Philadelphia. And that's another story in itself. But let me tell you something. Quad B, to talk about myself, Quad B used to, let me stop the screen share for now. Okay, so Quad B would, when he would get his ass whooped. Bro, my brother would get his ass whooped. My sister would get her ass whooped. And my mother's, I like to say, it's easy to laugh now, but at the time it wasn't funny. My mom's favorite weapons were extension cords and pieces of clothesline. See, she didn't like to use belts. She liked to use that thin material that when during the summer, if you home from school and you got in trouble and she whacked you across your thighs with it, that shit hurt. It stung. Okay? That shit stung. And then there was one other story. I can't tell you how many ass whoopings I received in my childhood, but I do remember the very last one, and I got to share it with you. So one day it was 1974, and hold on, before I start, let me see who's in the chat. Okay, we got Clips, Eva, and Deep. Ryan, how you doing? Yeah. Oh, by the way, Simply Deep, Wikipedia is not reliable from the standpoint of anybody can edit it, so you really have to. That's why you don't quote it. You go and you look for the citations and go from there. And of course, there's other places you can go to other than Wikipedia. The internet's a huge place, a huge ecosystem. So, I just want to say that, okay, I was going to talk about the last ass whooping I got. You'll love this. So it was the spring of 1974. It was like maybe June of 74. And at that time, I was in ninth grade. And at that time, they had middle school or junior high where you had 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. You graduated 9th grade, then you moved to the high school, which at the time housed the 10th, sophomore, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So I wasn't taking school all that seriously back then. Now, the school bus never showed up for some reason, so I was just going to go home. But then my mother went somewhere. So I was just going to go home and wait for my mom. But of course, one of my boys who had way more freedom than I did, he didn't have a father in the home. And I think that's one of the things my father kind of didn't like the kid because he didn't have a father in the home. He's been raising himself. Well, damn, Dad, that's not his fault, But that's how my father thought. Well, anyway, I'll talk about why I said that once I'm done the story. So I said to my boy, I said, yo, man, I'm just going to go home. And he said, no, man, why don't you hang out? Why don't we just hang out? I'm like, nah, man, I don't want to do that. And then you know what he said to me? What are you, a man or a mouse? And at that point, the gauntlet was thrown down. No, motherfucker, I ain't no fucking mouse. All right, we'll hang out. So we hung out. We walked around the neighborhood. We went to some other guy's house who was off from school that day too. And, we just hung out. And then we went back to his house, and at home was his aunt. So we hung out all day, and and then the time came around 2:30, when I normally came home. I said, all right, man, I'm going to get ready and go home. And so I went home, showed up at the door just like I normally did, acting like I came home from school, and I thought, yeah, okay, I don't normally play hooky from school, but I kind of got away with it. So later on in the evening, I get on my bicycle and I ride up to the 7-Eleven. Yeah, they had 7-Elevens back then. They did. They really did. Convenience stores. Matter of fact, that same 7-Eleven in my hometown is still there. Okay. Looks a little different, but it's still there. So I call myself going in. I get my Slurpee and a copy of Mad Magazine. I love me some Mad Magazine back in the day. As some of you might recall, there was something called Mad TV, which was sort of a counterpoint to Saturday Night Live. And that was based on Mad Magazine. So I ride my bike back home and I park my bike. I go bounding up the stairs to the back door and I open it up and I walk into the kitchen and my mother's sitting there. She looked at me and said, so where were you today? And at that point inside I was going, fuck, shit, damn. I was every cuss word I could think of that I couldn't say out loud was going through my head. I knew at that point, I knew my black ass was busted. She said, go on upstairs. All right, so I go upstairs to my bedroom. And my father comes in. Now, you got to understand, Joe, I said this to some people a little bit earlier. Joe Jackson probably did not enjoy working in the steel mills, forsaking his dream of being a musician. So he was probably pretty angry. My father dug ditches for the utility company, and it wasn't a job he particularly liked. He ended up staying with the utility company. He did some other jobs like being a mechanic and whatnot, which was a little better for him years later. But he ended up staying with the local utility for 30 years. But back in the 70s, he would come in smoking hot, like pissed every day. So when my mother told him, yes, Quad cut school, he played hooky today. Oh my. You saw those volcanoes in Hawaii? Well, my father birthed a new island because he exploded and the lava was flowing. He went, Quad! He didn't use my quad, but he didn't say he said my real name. He's like, take your pants down. I'm thinking, oh, fuck. He gonna beat my ass. He comes into my bedroom. He makes me strip down to my fucking tighty whities. Yeah, I wore tighty whities back in the day. I don't wear them anymore. Makes me lay across the bed. Takes off his belt, and he commences to wailing on my ass. He must have wailed on my ass about a dozen times, and I'm flinching and this and that, and I'm trying to hold back tears and this and that. And what happens was, at one point, he actually broke his belt across my ass. And at that point, I looked back, I thought, okay, maybe he'll stop. He looked at the belt. He kept on wailing some more. And I was crying. I was 14 years old, crying, not because of the pain, but because of the embarrassment and ignominy of being forced to lay across my bed, getting my ass whooped by my father. And it was just ignominy. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. My brother said he heard it years later. My brother even said he was crying for me. He said, damn, I thought he was going to kill you. I'm up here working like a dog and you're going to play hooky from school. And I tried to explain the bus never showed up and this and that. They weren't hearing any of that. They weren't hearing any of that shit. My mother nor my father, they weren't hearing. All they know was my black ass played hooky and I had to be punished. But that was the last corporal punishment type ass whooping I ever got. It's just one of those stories I like to tell people. It's funny. That was, oh man, that was funny. My sister says she thinks it's because I was hanging out with a kid that my father didn't like, but I don't know if that was the case. And my father's my father's dislike, him and my cousin played a prank on him by throwing a firecracker at him, which was a big mistake. And I don't think my father forgot that. But in any case, now you're wondering, how did my mom find out that I cut school? Well, my dumbass went back to my boy's house where his aunt was. And his aunt saw both of us. And his aunt was like, knew my mom and my mom. He said she was on the phone with my mom, said, oh, yeah, I saw Quad and so. Were they off from school today? Because they were over here early in the afternoon. And my mom was probably like, oh, really? And it took me a minute to figure that shit out. And I told my boy, I said, man, your aunt ratted me out. So that's my famous, that was the one and only time I cut school and I got caught. And I say all that to say that, corporal punishment. You talk about a guy like Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson was no different than any other black man who was growing up, who grew up in that time, who raised his kids. He was no different. He just saw an opportunity to have his kids get into the entertainment business, and it worked out. And he stayed on it. He stayed on them, no matter how them kids felt. He stayed on it. Now, how his kids are today, you can see they're still conflicted. On one hand, they hated the fact that he he did things to them. But on the other hand, he pushed them to do some great things where they're going to be remembered, especially Michael and Janet. He pushed them to do great things in the entertainment industry. So, and I think if you talk to a lot of people my age and all these guys, the whole Jackson clan, they're all baby boomers. All 9 of them, I believe, are baby boomers. If you talk to any black baby boomer, they'll tell you probably the same thing. They have conflicting feelings toward, assuming they grew up with both parents who didn't really know a lot. They weren't aware of a lot of things, and they only knew what they knew. And so I ain't mad at Joe, unless now if he was messing around with his oldest daughter, that's a whole nother thing. I don't know about that. As far as sexual abuse, I don't know. If he did that, then that's fucked up. But all that other stuff, that's normal. That's normal. So there's a fine line between abuse, being strict, and being abusive. And in the black community, and a lot of the greater community doesn't know. And I'm sure there are some white folks who whip their kids' asses too. But these days, I don't know. You see a lot of kids. I see white parents who are like trying to negotiate with their kids. And I'm looking at them like, you need to smack the shit out of him. Now, my kids, I have backhanded my kids when they were younger. I'm not going to lie. But my wife didn't like that shit because she was never backhanded or any of that stuff. Now she talked about her mom. Her mom would do some shit too, like, throw her mom through would beat her with like a wooden spoon or some shit like that when they misbehaved. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that to give y'all some context. I had heard that Joe was ailing, just was close to dying. This past weekend, I was listening to a radio station where a DJ announced it, and I thought, wow, okay, he was 89 years old, and he lived a hell of a life. That's for sure. At the very least, he lived a hell of a life. Not many of us can say that. So that's all I have to say about Joe Jackson. Wow, 3 watching. I'm hoping some of y'all see this on the upload. One more thing I wanted to mention. I mentioned it during a live stream hangout last night. Oh, by the way, does anybody want to get on the chat? I'm sorry. If y'all want to provide your context, or let me go ahead and give y'all the link. If you feel like jumping in, please do. We got 5 watching. We got Clips. We got Deep. We have Eva, Ryan James. Yeah, that's all we have. I also want to say that I'm trying to make some improvements to this channel, to my YouTube channel. I would like to try to monetize this channel only because I'm fucking sick of working for other people. Now, granted, I'll probably have to do it for the rest of my life, but at least I'd like another stream of income. And if I can get 1,000 subs and 4,000 watch hours, 4,000 hours worth of viewing of my videos, then YouTube will deign to share ad revenue with Quad B. So toward that end, I would like to try to get like 1,000 subscribers by year's end. And one of the things I'd like to do is have a giveaway. And I have some ideas about that. I do have some ideas about giveaways. One giveaway for the people who have subscribed to me from the start of this channel to the end of June. And then a separate giveaway for those who subscribe starting July 1st. And I will keep announcing it. So tell your friends, tell your in-laws, tell your friends, your parents, tell your siblings, tell your friends, aunts, uncles, in-laws, outlaws, tell them that this guy who calls himself Quad B has some interesting perspectives, because he's one of the few older dudes who is on YouTube who can give you that historical perspective. And I can talk about the Jackson 5 all day, because, like I said, my childhood and life pretty much tracked theirs. Michael, for example, was born a year before I was. He was born on August 29th, 1958, and I was born in November of 59. So his life pretty much tracked mine. Marlon, I don't know when Marlon and Randy were born, but then my brother was born 2 years later in 61. Matter of fact, my brother's about the same age as Barack Obama, who was also born in 61. And then my sister I think my sister's birthday, my sister was born about the same time Michelle was born. Michelle Obama was born, for whatever it's worth. And my daughter, you'll love this one. My daughter was born in the early morning hours of August 29th, which meant she shared a birth date with Michael Jackson. Now, that was by cesarean section. Now, she could have been born on the 28th, a few hours early, which meant she would have shared a birth date with another actor. I don't know if most of you probably have never heard of him. If you remember a show called WKRP in Cincinnati, a comedy about a radio station, a dude by the name of Richard Sanders, who played a bumbling newsman named Les Nessman, was born on August 28th. It was born on August 28th, but few years earlier. But so, yeah, I think my daughter got the better end of that deal, where she could brag that she shares a birth date with Michael Jackson. And my daughter is 30. But yeah, Joe Jackson, he was something else, man. He was something. And Lawrence Hilton Jacobs really did a good job of playing him. I mean, I wonder if anybody got any comment from here. Eva said, you'll make to 1,000. Your replay views are strong. Thank you. Well, folks like you help. Hey, folks like you help me out. But as I said, I'm going to be announcing a giveaway, and hopefully it'll have to do with a STEM aspect of STEM, because we have got to get our young people into STEM. And STEM, that's STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. We got to get our kids into that, because this shit is, you're talking about artificial intelligence, algorithms. That's how I like to say algorithms. Like, former Vice President Al Gore, who also lost, I have to ask a question, and this is totally off the topic. I brought up Al Gore. If Al Gore had won his home state of Tennessee in the 2000 presidential election, those contested 25 electoral votes in Florida would not have mattered. Al Gore would have been president and not George W. Bush. Think about that. How does a presidential candidate lose his home state? I don't know. Hell, even he could have won Arkansas if he had let Bill Clinton campaign for him. That's 6 electoral votes. Anyway, I don't know. That's a whole nother story right there. But as I said, getting back to STEM, we have to get our kids in STEM. And what I want to do is give away. You might see that you if you go all the way back to the first few vids on this channel, you'll see my face. And I do still work as a temp at a nonprofit that is devoted to science. And as you can imagine, this group is not a fan of the current administration, mainly due to the fact that a lot of those folks like to attack scientists on political grounds. Scientists are about science, whereas politicians are about politics. Like, for example, climate change and all that shit. Now, I'm going to say this. I do believe that human activity has some impact on climate change. We just don't know to what extent. I don't know to what extent. But we got to get our kids into this area, and I hope by giving away some science-related stuff. And I got some pretty neat stuff, books and everything like that. Remember books? We hopefully we can if whoever wins what I have to offer and I'm gonna, we're gonna do a drawing. I'm gonna get a list of all the subs by their YouTube names, put them in a hat, and let Mrs. Bamboozle do a live drawing, if you will, just to make sure everything is on the up and up. And whoever wins, I will announce it. You don't have to be watching, but I will announce the giveaways for the pre-July. My pre-July subs and my post-July subs. So, but I really like to make it to 1,000. And once I make it to 1,000, I will, definitely feel the need to communicate with you guys a whole lot more. I went out and I bought a set of lighting and a green screen, so you'll see some improvements. But yeah, I just wanted to get on here and talk about Joe and put Joe in context of the Black community, the Black experience dating back to the Depression when Joe was born and when my own father was around that time. They were born like I said, they were born 4 years apart. So, and I hope to be the person who will provide you all. I'm here to help. I'm here because I want my Black Gen Xers and my Black Millennials and my Black Zs. My youngest son, by the way, is a Z. He just graduated high school. He was born in 2000. And I truly believe that it's going to be the Zs that are going to clean up the mess that was created by the boomers, and I'm one, the Gen Xers, and to a certain extent, the Millennials. I really do believe it's going to be the Zs, that'll clean shit up if there's anything left to be cleaned up. And my son is one of the Zs, and he's doing pretty well. And I have to say I've been blessed that my 3 children, as I said, as I've said in the past, me and my wife have done our role for the Black community, which is birthing three productive members of the Black community, young. And here's the other thing. My wife and I are, a couple of liberal arts majors, but yet we spawn 3 techies. And that's what we need. We need more techies. So anyway, it is 8:52. I've been on here for about an hour now. Yeah, it's been about an hour. And I appreciate y'all staying with me. Clips, Deep, Ryan James, Eva, thank you for joining me on the chat. And as I, like I said, keep an eye out for the for more announcements on my giveaway, my STEM giveaway, and the Quad B STEM giveaway. And as I always say, if you like this live stream, please share it. Please subscribe to the Quad B channel. Yeah, I kind of got to bribe you a little bit, but that's how it goes. Oh yeah, I have to like my own video. I forgot to do that. Kind of like when you run for office and you vote for yourself, you forget to vote for yourself. That's an unforgivable sin, right? And here's the thing. What was I saying? Oh, as I always say, if you like this video, please share it. Please subscribe to the Quad B channel. And please click on the bell so that when Quad B goes live or uploads a video, you will be notified. So until next time, this is Quad B saying peace and deuces and God bless. And we'll see y'all later. Have a great rest of the evening. Take care. Bye-bye.